Hello, I'm Rick Stivers. I'd like to welcome you to YoungMartin'sReels. Today we're going to be working on this Okuma Classic Pro 452L baitcaster. And it's a nice reel. I picked it up, or I didn't pick it up. Ken picked it up at a estate sale. And when I first picked it up, I thought the reel was shot because I picked it up and yeah, the handle turned nice and freely and everything looked good. And then I flipped the bail up to lock the bail and still nothing happened. I said, oh, well, I said, Ken, this one may be shot. And after Ken left, I picked the reel up and I was playing with it a little bit. And Ken told me, well, use it for parts if you have to. But after I got to looking at it, what I found was that the drag had been loosened all the way up, which made it operate that way. But now, even after I tightened the drag down, the reel was very tight. It wouldn't hardly turn at all. And I put it down and didn't think anything more about it. And then a couple of days ago, when I put it on the list to be worked on here, I decided to play with it just a little bit before I started taking it apart. And what I found was when you flip this down, the spool was very, very tight. And I thought, well, it's probably old grease. And I thought, well, wait a minute, we haven't adjusted it any. So I grabbed hold of the knob here and I tried to turn it and it wouldn't turn. No matter what I did, I could not turn it. So I ended up taking a pair of channel locks and grabbing hold of the nut, and I had to turn this thing 2 full turns all the way around before I got it loose enough to where I could turn it by hand. Okay. Once I got it there, I still had almost another whole turn to turn it out before the spool loosened up. Now that that's done, and I've got the spool properly adjusted, almost. There we go. Got just a tiniest bit of motion. Now, hey, this thing works really nice. I think we could probably stand to loosen it just a hair more. There we go. Very nice reel. But does it still need to be taken apart and serviced? Yes, so that's what we're going to do today. So just because a reel isn't performing doesn't mean it's not out of adjustment. And I know that, and for some reason I was just doing a quick visual on them with Ken, and I should have been a little more thorough than I was. But Ken was happy to know that the reel was not shot, and he is going to be able to turn it around and resell it. So let's get started on this. I will tell you this, before I started on the Mitchell 300S that I was working on the other day, I went looking for a schematic and I was unable to find one. And after I posted the video, Tommy Modisette came back and showed me that yes, he had a schematic for it. So I did not leave all sources, all stones unturned. And I decided, well, from now on, I need to get back to the basics and making sure that if I can get hold of a schematic and look at a reel, how it's made, and understand it better before I just take it apart and go right straight into it, I'm better off. So I have the schematic here for this Classic 452L, and I've looked it up and I've pondered over it and looked at it a little bit to see how it goes together. And this looks like it's going to be a fairly simple reel to do. When I say simple, one of the things, let me tell you something that you probably should do before you take one apart. If you can get hold of the schematic, the thing that you need to kind of look for when you're looking at these is you start looking for things like, okay, how many drag washers do I have? What's the count on those? What's the positioning of the washers in there? Where are the bearings? Do I have any bearings? Do I have any shims? And look at where those shims are so that you don't lose them when you take it apart, so that you know that you're looking for them to begin with. One of the things that people lose often is this little washer right here. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. Neil, I'm going to try to zoom so you can see better. Let's bring this down right there. Okay, and right here, there's a little washer right there, and people have a tendency to not see that washer because it stays in the cap when they take it off, and if the cap sits down upside down, the washer falls out. Next thing you know, you've got a washer. And that's I can tell I need to scrub my fingernails after this trip. All right, let's get back to work. So I've looked at the schematic, we're ready to get going. We're going to start off the same way we pretty much always do. And that's what I was telling you, Neil. I always forget to zoom back out. So that's why I try to stay right there. And let's get this show on the road. All right, we're going to start off by removing the screw that's holding the handle nut lock down. Set that over. And that looks like a 10 millimeter. There we go. Take the handle off. Remove the drag star knob. And now we've got a bearing in here, which is what we expected to see. Okay. And this was the knob that they over tightened, so we can just loosen it up a little bit. It's nice to have it loose when you put it all back together because it keeps things from binding when you put it together. Okay, I'm going to turn each one of these one turn with my common to get them broke loose. Or at least a quarter turn anyway, just to break them loose, and then I'll go in with my Phillips and remove them the rest of the way. Okay, I'm gonna back this out a little bit. There we go. And let's see if we can remove this cover now. There we go. And that looks pretty good. From what I can see so far. All right, we're gonna go ahead now and remove the spool and inspect the gear. There's our clicker gear. This one here is our drive gear for the worm gear for our line guide. And there seems to be a fair amount of excess grease down in there, so we're going to be taking that apart. Normally, well, maybe we'll see if I can clean it where it's at, but we'll see. We're going to go ahead and take this end off. Let's get in there and clean it up. All right, now we'll slide this cover off. And now we can much easier get in here to clean this up. Okay. I got a plastic spring for the clicker. And not a lot of dirt. It's mostly just some old dried up grease that needs to be cleaned out here. Okay, let's take a look here. Now, our worm gear is very dirty, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take it out, I believe. If I can see how to take it out. Okay, it has a C-clip, or an E-clip, right here. So we are going to strive to remove that. Okay, here's what we're going to do instead. We're going to leave that in there. We're going to zoom back out. We're going to leave that in, and we're going to clean the worm gear where it sits. There is a way to do it, and I'm going to show you. And since I can't get that clip off, there is a little clip here, and my eyesight is getting kind of bad, and I can't see it well enough to get in there to get it out. So what we're going to do, we're going to leave that in place, and we will unscrew the pawl. Okay, remember earlier I told you to watch out for the washer. Okay, the washer's down inside there. We're gonna leave it in there. And let's see if this is a steel pawl or a stainless steel pawl. If it's steel, a magnet will pull it out. Like that. Okay. And this one, wow. That's the dirtiest pawl I might have ever seen. Okay. So we're going to clean up that pawl. And we're going to clean up this carrier. And we're going to clean up the worm gear. Now the way we're going to do that is we'll spray it a little WD-40. We're going to rotate it around a little bit and let it sit there. Let that start to dissolve. We're going to do the same thing on this side over here. That WD-40 will dissolve most of that grease. And let's take a look at the spool. And it could use a little shot of WD-40 as well. On each end, like so. And that's going to bring us down here to the bridge assembly. And we're going to start off by cleaning off the grease around this E-clip so we can see it. There. Okay, Neil, we're going to blow this up a little bit so you can see it. There we go. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to pop off this E-clip like so. And I'll set that over to the side away from the pawl and such. Okay, and then we're going to come back and we're going to remove these 3 screws. I'm not sure I can do it with this screwdriver. I might have to get a different one. Let's find out. Okay, this one is appropriate. Two screws, and those 2 are identical. I imagine this 3rd one is too, but we'll check to verify. All right, with that done, this bridge assembly should come out. Before we do that, I think what I want to do is remove the spring right here from the anti-reverse. There we go. That's disconnected now. And let's see if we can get this to pop up out of here. There we go. And it's down on these posts where the screws were. There's actually a post there, and it kind of locks onto them. So let's lift this out. There we go. Oh my gosh, look at all that grease. All right, there's the bridge assembly. And everything wants to fall apart at that point. That's fine. And we're going to zoom back out a little bit now. And there's our anti-reverse. And it sits right there in that hole with this pawl. Okay, with that spring going around that post. Okay, we're going to get this grease up out of here. And that's kind of what happens to your excess grease when you put more grease in the reel than it needs to be. It just kind of finds some place and it piles up there and usually collects dirt. And then it gets old and brittle. And then what'll happen is it'll break loose and then leave a mess somewhere. All right, let's now see if we can take this screw out for the jack plate. All right, there's the jack plate screw. There's these 3 screws. jack plate. Here's our yoke assembly with our pinion gear. Here's our 2 springs that go for the yoke. They hold tension on it. And then out slides the main gear. And this is where your drag washers are at. Uh-oh. We've got a broken washer inside. Okay, this is the tension washer that goes on the shaft right here. All right, and I will have to see if I can come up with another one. Probably so. I've got a pretty good sized parts pile down there. Now, this is all ready. It's just I'm gonna spray it and set it off to the side so I can clean and scrub it up later. And the only thing left to take apart is the main gear. Okay, we have a keyed washer, a fiber washer, a eared washer. All of this should slide off this shaft like this, and it did. Okay, we can scrub that up, clean it up. We'll set it over here and spray it as well. Now we still got a fiber washer in here and another keyed washer and another fiber washer, which I may or may not be able to get out. Nope, we're gonna have to leave that one in there, I'm afraid. Okay, I'm gonna go off camera at this point. Scrub all these parts. When I come back, everything should be clean and ready to reassemble. All right, I told you I was going to show you how to clean this part, so we're going to do that. What we're going to do is I spray WD-40 down inside, like so, and I just take a straight bristle brush like this one right here, and I just start pushing it down and scrubbing it around inside there. And I'll work it back and forth a little bit, and then I'll move it on to a new spot. Now, a lot of people think that these grooves down inside here are painted black. And that's not true. What that is, that's just old dirt and grease down inside those grooves. So you keep scrubbing until that stuff comes out. And if when you're turning, when you're finished cleaning, if it still feels gritty, you're going to have to find some way to take it apart. This one doesn't. This one seems to have dissolved the dirt and grease that was in there. And there you have a nice clean worm gear again. All right. I still haven't cleaned the pawl, but I will, and we'll get to putting that all back together. Okay, as you noted when I took it apart, this part was broken. And I believe that the reason that that part was broken was because it was installed in the wrong location. If you look at the schematic right here, see this piece right here? Okay, that is a tensioner washer, okay? And it's designed to tighten down tension on the drag washers. It takes a tremendous amount of force to do that. This washer right here is simply a tensioner for this knob that applies just a slight amount of pressure on it to keep it from moving around. So, and from changing its adjustment. And I think what happened, someone lost this piece and they replaced it with this piece inside, and you're trying to use that in a drag is just way too destructive. It couldn't handle it. So they put the wrong piece in there. So I do have a replacement. This one here is the correct piece for right here. And I still have to come up with a regular washer to go right here to fit over. So I've got to go back and look for that. I didn't realize I was still missing that part. I've got the bearing and we've got everything else that we need there. There's the bearing, and unless there's a washer stuck to the bearing, and there's not, then I still got to find one more. Okay, I'm back with a suitable washer to go on there. All right, so what we're going to have is we will have our final stack up here. We go. All right, what we're going to have, this will be our final keyed washer in the drag stack. Okay, this piece will be gone now. On top of that, we'll go this tensioner. That'll be this part here. See, here's your final drag stack washer here. Come over here, the tensioner washer here, followed up by this washer, followed up by this collar, followed by this bearing, followed by this, and then followed up by the tensioner and then the handle. All right, so that we now have all the pieces parts to put all that together. So let's get back and get started with putting this thing back together. And I will say not everyone is going to have the ability to go over to Dad's mega thousands of parts and go through it. But what I did discover today is it is very convenient to have all those parts there. And what I have been doing is I have been turning reels into parts reels. I have been putting them in a bag, labeling what parts are bad in there, and put them in that bag so that I could go to that particular reel if I ever got one. Well, what I'm coming to find out, which is what I think my dad was doing, which is when he got a parts reel, he would dismantle the reel into all of its associated parts and then put all those parts together so that if he needed a tensioner like this, he would go to his drawer full of tensioners and he would look through it, because this same tensioner will fit probably 200 reels. So it's easier to know that and just go to the tensioner box and look through them than it is trying to find this exact reel, because I don't have one of these reels in a parts box. Okay, let's start. All right, let's start off by reassembling our level wind here. First thing we'll do, just to help this. Now, I remember I sprayed this with WD-40, and some people seem to think the WD-40 is a lubricant. WD-40 will lubricate for just a few minutes, and that's about it. After that, it loses its ability to lubricate. So what you want to do is use oil on these parts, because WD-40 is not going to get the job done long term. And I also do not grease these parts. I only oil them, because grease tends to collect dirt and grime and will cause it all to bind up. All right, we're going to start off by installing the pawl. And we're going to drop the pawl down inside. For those who need a better view of it, let's go ahead and focus this here. All right, we're going to put the pawl in. And it needs to go kind of facing the direction that the cuts and the worm gear are. So you put it in. Let's go ahead and, there we go. The washer is still in here, so we're going to put that in. But before we put this in, let's go ahead and give it a shot of oil. And then we'll screw the cap back down gently. Now, let's begin to turn this and see if it tracks well. If it does, you can start turning it down a little more, and a little more. There you go. Once you know that it's tracking well, you can go ahead and snug it down. You don't need to really crank down on it real hard. Once you got it, let's go ahead and give it another shot of oil inside there, since that had corroded up so bad. And we're going to put another drop of oil right along here, because this tends to gather some corrosion, since it's simply a steel part rather than a stainless steel part, and we don't want it to rust as it had before. All right, that part's done. We'll get that out of the way. Next, we're going to begin to reassemble our bridge assembly. And we're going to start off with this piece. Now, I believe that this piece comes off, but it didn't come off when I took it apart. As a matter of fact, I know it comes off, but it may be pressed on, and I don't want to have to try to press it back on and off. So we're going to leave it just like it is. We're going to start off putting on the bottom Teflon washer, followed up by our main gear. Let's see here. So it's just round, so it should just snap on. There we go. And it should be able to turn. Okay, we have our one washer in there that we did not get to come loose. We're going to follow that up. We're going to put a little bit of oil, or sorry, a little bit of drag washer grease on that drag washer. Then we're going to put, let's zoom this in a little bit. There we go. Then we're going to put on this keyed washer, which has got the keyway on the center of it, so that it will lock in here. Then we're going to put a little bit of grease on the next fabric washer. Drop it in. Now comes the eared washer. That's this one here with the two little ears on it. We're going to put that on and slide it down here, and those two ears have got to go into these notches right here, like that. See? Then we take our last drag washer, grease it lightly, slide it on, and then comes our keyed washer. And if you wish at this point, you can go ahead, put some grease on the shaft right here to help hold this, and put your tensioner washer on. This is the one we just replaced because it was missing. There we go. Slide it on down. Then you've got your regular washer. We'll put a little grease on the tensioner washer to hold this washer in place. And then we've got one more piece that we're going to try to put on right now before we put all this together. And that's going to be this sleeve. And that should hold all that together like that so that it can't fall apart. Okay? I'll set that off to the side. At this point, I believe we are ready to try to build back up our jack plate. Now, we'll start off with these two screws. I'm sorry, springs. And go here on these two posts, like so. And then we have our pinion gear. And our pinion gear needs to be greased. The pinion gear is going to fit onto this yoke, right like that. And before we do that, let's go ahead and put us a little bit of grease on the yoke itself, top and bottom, because this pinion has to slide on that. And then we're going to turn this around to where this opening, we're going to turn this around so that this opening right here is going to go towards this big hole over here. And we're going to set this back down over those two posts like that. Now, we need to put some grease onto the eccentric, and we're going to put some on the back of the jack plate, and we'll put some on the ramps on the jack plate. And those ramps, what they're going to do, there's a piece of fuzz there, lint. What we're going to do, those ramps ride right here on this side of this yoke, pushing it up and down. So we'll set this around over here, like so, slide it over, and then we're going to line up this hole right here with the slot in the jack plate. And then we're going to put this little tiny screw in right there to hold all that together. All right, now this is the first time for me on this, and I might have done that wrong. I should have put this in first. We'll see in just a second. Let's go ahead. I might take that jack plate back out. Let's go ahead and grease up the main gear. And let's see if this will slide in. No, it will not go around that jack plate. That's what I was afraid of. Okay, so let's back up. Remove the jack plate. And let's set the main gear in. And it's going to want this bearing, I'm afraid, to be in the hole to help align it. Slide the main gear down inside like that. Okay, now it's going to kind of become a balancing act because you kind of have to hold that in place. All right, now what's missing off of this is there should be this washer right here. Let's go ahead and put it in place. And let's put a gentle amount of grease here, like so, because our anti-reverse is going to ride right here and it's got the click there. But now that the gear is in, we can come back and set this jack plate back in place, like so, and go ahead and screw the screw back in. The next piece to go back in, I believe, is going to be this anti-reverse piece, and it's going to sit right in here, except I don't believe it's going to go that way. I think it has to go this way. Okay, so what you need is this piece is going to go through the anti-reverse pawl like that, and then this small end here is going to go down into that hole right there, like that. And then this anti-reverse has got to drop over like that. And at this time, we don't want to put the spring on yet, but we do want to make sure that it's over here where we can get hold of it. And now we've got the washer on here. I think that we are ready to drop this plate back on, like so. And there went the bearing out the other side, which I was afraid that would happen, but that's okay. Let's set it back in place, like so. And one thing that will help this bearing stay in place is if we go ahead at this point and screw on our drag knob, at least enough to hold that there. Okay, now let's see if we can get all this to go in place. Our anti-reverse seems to have popped up out of the hole, I'm afraid. Or did it? No, everything seems to be we're gonna look down inside here as best we can and see what we got going. I'm afraid the anti-reverse is not in the hole. There, now everything's down where it needs to be. I just needed to rotate it a little bit. Okay, and we will take and put one of the screws in. Put one on the other side. Oh, everything's down. There we go. Put this one in. Now, before we bother putting the next one in, let's see if this will rotate. It does. Okay. Now, I'm going to use my safety pin that I have bent to hook this spring. Bring it over and pull it around this post. There we go. Now Is the anti-reverse working? Yes, it is. And you can see it working right there. If you watch right in here, you will see it doing its little click. All right, the next thing we got to put in is this washer right here. And the one that was originally in here was very, very worn. So I acquired another one and trimmed it to fit a little bit. The center didn't want to go, but I adjusted it ever so slightly with a Dremel tool because it was wobbling all over. There we go. All right. All right. Let's put a little oil on here. Oh yeah. Nice fit there now. The old washer, just the whole center of it was wallowed out so that it was almost to the point where the clip was going to be able to fall through it. So, okay, there we go. The jack plate operates functionally. The lever comes back, it pushes down on the jack, or pushes downward on the jack plate. The jack plate forces the yoke down, which separates the separates the pinion gear from the spool. All right, we're going to go ahead and put some oil here on this gear, and we are going to oil the bearing. Okay, now this is going to line up. The gear is going to go over here by the gear, and we're going to line this up so where we can get the holes lined up. And if you look, this hole here and this hole here, if you can get those two aligned, the rest of it's probably going to drop right in. Okay, now these are the short screws. There were long screws and short screws. These are the short screws. We're going to go ahead and put them all 5 back in. Okay, now we're going to set this gear back inside, and it really doesn't require hardly any grease whatsoever. This is your clicker, and this is going to be the intermediate gear that drives the crosswind assembly, not crosswind, level wind assembly. Oh, let's see what's happening. We are impacting the crosswind assembly. So let's go ahead and rotate it over and out of the way. Like so. Now let's see if we can get this to go in. There we go. Okay. We've got this reassembled now. And we don't need this one because we have one. All right. It looks like we're ready to go ahead and put the side back on. This is where we're going to go in and put a few drops of oil into the bearing down below. So I forgot to tell you about that before. We've got grease there. Everything is well lubricated. Let's go ahead and set this in place. Try to get it lined up to where that lever is going to go up. There we go. That drops in. And wow, that was simple enough. Okay, now this tensioner that's on here is definitely flattened out. So we'll add a little tension to it. Put this one on. See how that will, when you tighten it down, that's going to provide tension against that, keep it from rotating. All right. Let's slip our Okuma handle back on. And we will tighten down the nut. A few drops of oil for the handle. See if we can tighten up the drag. Nice. Okay. It's a little too loose. Anti-reverse works. And yes, I would love to be able to spin this up like you do the non-level winds, but it just doesn't happen. They can't keep going because of all the gear train that they've got. Let's check the clicker. All right. Oh, I got a screw I didn't tighten down. How many of you were standing there waiting with bated breath to see if I was going to tighten down that last screw? All right. So there you have the Okuma 452L Pro Classic Pro. And just because a reel, now this reel at the beginning appeared to be broken, then it appeared to be good, then it was definitely broken again. That's why when you have to be careful about what you get into with used reels. I have a preponderance of extra parts laying around that I can find and put onto things. I was able to modify that one washer to replace the one that was wallowed out. Most people are not going to have that many extra parts laying around, and parts are not available. So be careful about buying a used reel. Just because it seems that it works well doesn't necessarily mean that it will. For now, that's Rick Stivers. Oh, by the way, if you like the video today, always when you get done, loosen up your drag and take the pressure off of it so that when you're ready to go fishing next, it'll be good to go. All you got to do then is just tighten it down to what you need for a drag, and you're ready to go again. So if you liked the video today, hit the like button. If you didn't like it, that's cool. Hit the dislike button. Tell me what you didn't like. And for now, that's Rick Stivers, the Young Martin's Reels, signing out.